Whiskey for the Ages is not sponsored or endorsed for any product or program mentioned in this show and receive no remuneration from their creators.
Hello everybody, and a warm welcome back to our Whiskey for the Ages podcast subscribers. Today I'm your host, Brian Dawson. I've got Hannah here on my left.
Big thank you to those of you who are tuning in for the first time with us.
And Alora is on my right.
Hello everybody, I hope that you guys enjoy the show, and to all of you longtime listeners, consider subscribing to the podcast as well. It really helps us out.
It does help us out. Subscribers get notified first when episodes are uploaded, and subscribers also help us move up in rankings so we're easier to find and more listeners can help drive future content. And we are getting ready to branch out to a new platform. We've been tinkering around with it this last week. YouTube.
We have audio of all of our podcasts up on YouTube now. You can find us by Whiskey for the Ages or WftA. There you go. But tonight's going to be a great show.
Exactly, because we have an awesome guest here.
And I am excited. I first became aware of our guest back in February through LinkedIn publications. I belong to quite a few different groups, and I'd see these graphics, and it's barrel chemistry, and I'm going, barrel chemistry? What's all this about? And I'd say, oh, that's kind of interesting. And every so often he'd post something and I would respond, and within minutes it seemed like our guest would respond back to me. And I'm thinking, wow, this is pretty cool. I say, I got to meet this guy. So anyway, that's how it came about. With now more than 16,000 LinkedIn followers, and the person behind the Distilled Edit, a newsletter that he puts out every week. Sometimes I see so many newsletters, I'm surprised at where do you get all this time? And he's also on Spirit Chemistry on Substack. You could actually download his entries and get good, clear pictures of what's going on. I'd like to welcome John Angus, a whiskey flavor explorer. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for the introduction as well. I'm glad that you found a lot of interest in my graphics. Yeah, that's really nice to hear that you've really enjoyed reading them. Yeah, I enjoy that.
So much comes out that sometimes I don't even know where to begin. And I feel foolish that I say, well, that's good, because I want to say something. I want to interact with what you're writing, but there's so much content. I say, I need to digest this before I make a comment.
Absolutely. Yeah, when I start going down a bit of a rabbit hole of, like reading into the chemistry, the science behind each of these different stages, I end up, I don't just read about, say, oxidation in barrels, because everything is so interconnected. I end up just going down rabbit holes, reading around it, and then this helps to inform and give me a better understanding of other areas. So it's just everything's coming at me a million miles an hour, and then that's why I'm putting it out in a million miles an hour. And it can be tiring, but it's also quite fun, I think.
So you must have some time set aside each day to devote to family and work, and then this. It seems like I mentioned, where do you find the time?
I sometimes wonder that myself. It's mostly, I don't really tend to switch off that much. My brain's always going, so I'm either always on my laptop, I'm always like tinkering away, I'm always learning about something. Yeah, I think my wife would prefer it if I put my phone and laptop down a little bit more often. But yeah, I just can't help it. I love learning.
Well, my girls say the same thing about me. Says, put your phone down, watch your picture show, whatever. It's something. I've always got something going on in my head as well. We've poured something. I know John's got a work night here tomorrow, actually, and he's a lot closer to his work night than we are.
Because you're in England, across the pond.
That's right.
Hannah, what did you?
Today I poured the Glenlivet Founders Reserve. We had some scotch on the podcast episode just last time, and I felt like scotch again today. Went to an old favorite, the Glenlivet.
And Laura, what did you pour?
I was thinking Maker's Mark, but I ended up pouring Blade and Bow. We've talked a little bit about Blade and Bow in previous episodes, and it's just something that I really, really like. I can just go to it and just chill out.
And in honor of this show, I've poured an experiment. When I say an experiment, Hannah and I have done quite a few reviews. And over the years, we've done these reviews. And Laura does the reviews too.
They're more in podcast form.
At any rate, when I do a review, I would pour my glass, and then Hannah would pour a glass. We'd do a review. We wouldn't talk to each other. We'd just enjoy it. And then we would come together and we would have two completely different views of what we just drank out of the same bottle. We're going, how is this possible? We didn't notice it as much on low proof products like 90 proof, 86 proof, whatever. But when we started getting above 117 into the 120s, it became very apparent that these were different pours. We both like high proof. And I've always had this thought, and I know that the chemistry, and John, maybe you can elaborate on this in the future, that first pour out of the bottle is going to be different than the one near the bottom of the bottle. Could be because of oxidation. It could be because of age or time in the bottle. It could be a variety of things. So we've started, whenever we're pouring 3 pours of a high proof bourbon or whatever it might be, we'll pour a little bit in one glass, a little bit in another glass, a little bit in the third, and then mix it up. So now we're blending our own bottle, if you will, so that we each have the same experience. So my experiment here is a neck pour, because on all of our bourbons that are over 120 proof, we're pouring into a bottle, and we're calling it our neck pour infinity bottle. And we've actually filled 7 bottles over time, and then we pour some off, and I've got a little sample bottle. This particular batch is from the 7th batch, and we've been keeping track of how much corn the recipe has, how much rye, how much wheat, and whatever. So we have a running total that varies between bottlings. We never pour the bottles completely empty. We pour them about half, and then we start all over again. So there's always some left in the bottle. It's our infinity bottle. So this particular batch, batch number 7, 75% corn, 8% rye, 5% wheat, 12% malt barley, has an approximate char of the barrels of 3.3, goes into the barrel at barrel entry at about 125. So this is an aggregate total of everything that's gone in. And this particular batch has happened to sit about 62.1% ABV or 124 proof. That's what I'm drinking tonight, in honor of you.
Well, I'm glad to see that you're being a bit of a scientist in the way that you drink. That's really fun.
Well, I've got scientists on both sides of this. Alora is my musical scientist, and Hannah's my biology scientist. How about some background, John? How did you come to become a chemist?
Well, I was just quite good at school at science, and then the school system here in the UK means that you do what are called GCSE qualifications, and then you decide what you'd like to do at A levels. And then I decided that I wanted to do chemistry, physics, maths, get a taste of the different sciences. And then chemistry just stood out for me. So that's what I went and studied at university. So I I went to the university here, so shout out to the University of York. I got my master's degree in chemistry here, and then I went a very indirect route to where I am now. So when I finished, I decided to become a school teacher because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And, well, I was about to make a self-deprecating joke. Those who can't teach, as the old saying goes. So,
That's a universal thing around the world.
So went and became a teacher for a while, which I suppose is sort of lent towards me being able to maybe help to explain this in a way that, you know, people can understand. But I think teaching just wasn't for me. So I left teaching and I got back into the lab, which I absolutely love. And then, so I got to work in a sector in the UK which is growing called the bioeconomy. So that's looking at taking biological waste and valorizing it, so trying to make some money from it. So this could be, it could be anything. It could be, how do we get the most value from our sawdust waste from a local timber mill, all the way up to anaerobic digestion, fermentations, distillations of products. But because of that, it would mean that a lot of breweries, a lot of distilleries, they came to where I was working, and they would say, right, so we've got this waste, what can we do with it? How can we make money from it? Or, you know, is there a way to use it in some way that's more environmentally conscious? The good thing about those sorts of projects is that you get you get an excuse to go out on a site visit. So fantastic.
I like that.
And yeah, it's just, before that, I never really had too much of, say, an interest, let's say, in the brewing and distilling world. I think I saw it more as just something that I enjoy drinking. But then once I actually started to see how it was made and how they can influence flavor and the science that they're doing, even without realizing sometimes, and you mix in that with some of the tradition, and it was just lovely. And it's just something that got under my skin, and I haven't been able to, think of anything else. Fortunately, my last workplace was downsizing, and then I moved into a new role. So now I work for the UK government, again, working in a circular economy, so making things more environmentally conscious, all of that good stuff, and I do enjoy that. But yeah, I got into these LinkedIn posts as a way initially of networking, of just kind of wanting to meet and talk to other people in the industry and just share a bit about what I was learning, because I would always be learning about, the science behind just different aspects of brewing and distilling. Yeah, it just sort of exploded from there, really.
Two things of note, you said biorenewables and then dealing with distillage. There is a small distiller in northeastern Wisconsin. That's where I grew up, was in Wisconsin. And we go back once a year. We have a cabin on a lake back there. And we stop by this distiller. We've mentioned it on our show many times. The 45th Parallel is the name of the place. They do all of their stillage and recycle it. So much so that the farmers are using their spent stillage. But they've taken it to the next level. They've gone to restaurants in the area, and they've gone to other places that have leftover product, biodegradable, I guess, and they've formed a great unit of people and farms in northern Wisconsin to where they're basically taking all this stuff and turning it back into something productive. And then just recently,
absolutely,
we had a news story that one of the biggest distillers in the U.S., Buffalo Trace, has partnered with a company called Meridian to where they are now piping their spent stillage directly to Meridian, or will be soon, and they're making pellets for fish food and all kinds of things. So really cool. Really cool stuff.
Yeah, there's quite a lot. Well, as you can imagine, with Scotland producing so much Scotch, they also have large quantities of brewer spent grain and stillage, and they're also coming up with innovative ways to use it. So, this can be from anything from just using it as cattle feed, all the way to trying to get more value out of it, essentially. Keep the product in the economy longer. Try and actually, something like cattle feed is what we would say is on the sort of lowest tier of money that you can sort of make from a waste product. But yeah, so what you're always looking to do is just get that further up, trying to see what you can make from it. And I've heard of people doing that, trying to make some aquaponic food from spent stillage, and I think that's great. I think anything like that is worth investing in.
So, on to spirit chemistry. Is this kind of where you got started? Is you started, like you say, with the biorenewables? Is this what got you into thinking, hey, there's something here that we can kind of learn together and teach the world at the same time?
And call spirit chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something where I just thought I would initially just start sharing a bit about, in the case, I think I started all the way back in February, it was with maturation. So it started with barrel chemistry, like you said, and it's just interesting just how much science goes on there. And it started with just me kind of just sharing what I was learning, how lignin and hemicellulose breakdown during the charring can lead to all sorts of different extractions when the spirit lies in it for years, how different types of cask finishes take in some of the previous liquid and then impart that into the new, and just what sort of character that can add. And then it just seemed like there was an audience very hungry for this sort of information. Yeah, it's just been born out of that, really. And I think that there is a lot of people that are not wanting to stay mystified with spirits, but that are actually wanting to learn the science behind spirits. Because I think as well that when you know, say, the chemistry behind why a particular flavor is produced, you're then able to actually go and experiment a little bit more, but see if you can produce that flavor in abundance, or maybe you want to minimize it, and it just allows you to have a few extra tools in your distiller's playbook, I think. So I think that's where it's come from, really.
Then finally it got to a point where you had to edit your work down to where you could do a weekly summary, so that those of us who miss something, you're now coming out with this newsletter, the Distilled Edit. Sometimes I look at that and I go, I don't have time to read everything here, but I'm so wrapped up in it that I have to read every moment of it. I mean, I think I wrote once, there's a lot to unpack here.
I think as well, it's quite useful for me, because I also sometimes, like I said before, sometimes I can go down some rabbit holes, and sort of building the bridges between each of the posts sometimes isn't always obvious. And I think sometimes having that step back at the end of the week where I'm trying to sort of, explain the post that I've done and recap the post that I've done, it sort of helps me to understand, yes, I started here and I ended here, and it was all for a reason, because my brain is just a little bit erratic sometimes.
So is that where the flavor explorer in you started to come out?
Yeah. A couple of months into doing all of this, I started paying a little bit more attention to the bottles that I was drinking, and quite a lot of the time, and obviously it's not the case for every single one, but quite a lot of the time you would see on a bottle the flavor notes, and it would say hints of vanilla, hints of toffee, or a hint of coffee, and you can pick up 2 or 3 bottles and it won't say it in that exact order, but there will always be a hint of vanilla. Well, not always, but there will most likely be a hint of vanilla, a hint of toffee. That's good to a certain extent. But what that doesn't tell you, you pick up 3 bottles and they've all got very similar flavor notes like that. What is written on that bottle that is going to make you, the customer, think, this is the bottle I want to try? Where on that bottle does it actually explain why these 3 bottles that say with the same flavor notes actually taste different? Because they do. They will taste different.
Absolutely.
But it will be subtle. But it doesn't explain why. And I think that, for me, has been a proper mission, has been trying to explain that just saying vanilla isn't necessarily helpful. Mm-hmm. Okay? Why are you experiencing vanilla? To what extent are you experiencing vanilla? Is it a major flavor? Is it just a subtle flavor that's
vanilla
familiar?
custard? Or is it vanilla bean? Or is it, vanilla in a milkshake? I mean, they all have different vanilla flavors.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how Hannah and I got started with our reviews. We were tasting so many things that we had to put them down on paper just to say, what is this? We see a lot of cherries in bourbon. We get that cherry element. Is it a maraschino cherry? Or is it a Montmorency cherry, which is sour? Or is it pie cherry? What is it? Or is it a grape? Or is it more raisin-like? I mean, there are so many different flavors a person can get out. And like you said, you look at the back of the bottle, you take 3 bottles, they all say the same thing, but they're all different. And one of them might be good, and the other one might not be.
Yeah. And it's just, I don't quite know, what I can do, about that, and I don't know if there is anything I can do. It's just the way that the industry is. But at the same time, I kind of just want to sort of demystify these flavors, explain where they come from, how they get into your drink, how you can shape the amount of them, why it might be that it's overwhelming or it's subtle, or maybe why, and this may be a future thing, but it then goes down many, many more rabbit holes. But, like you say, some flavors, they can change. You can pick up notes of cherry, but then that cherry can change. And that's not to say that it's ever actually come in contact with cherry. No. It's not to say that it can sometimes be that there is a flavor compound that will give cherry notes, or a combination of flavor compounds. And sometimes it's when those flavor compounds are adjusted, their ratio is changed ever so slightly, that you can start to shift on that cherry spectrum, and the same for others. So for me, this is more about if you can understand where, say, a particular flavor compound can come from, then you can start to adjust your flavor profile. Suddenly it doesn't just become cherry. It may become, and I don't know if this is a regionalism, but a Bakewell tart, almond and cherry.
Yeah.
It could be. You can start to experiment a lot more there. But the other issue with tasting notes, I'm not entirely sure how to completely combat that. But for me, it is a bugbear.
For me, I struggle with it a lot, and it's something that I talk about on the show pretty often. I personally don't like it when a distiller gives me the tasting notes on the back of the bottle. I think that it can be pretty limiting into, I have to go into this bottle expecting this flavor when that may not be what my palate is going to ultimately pick up. Or it makes me think these are the only things that are going to be there, and I'm not going to think about the Bakewell tart or the maraschino cherry. I'm just going to be stuck on cherry. So that's my biggest issue with it. But do you still see a purpose in having tasting notes on bottles, or in any regard?
Or is it tradition?
Or is it tradition and we go, this is what we have to do?
Well, it's hard to say, really, because while there's the likes of yourselves that, from the sounds of it, have quite refined palates, I I'm going to put my hand up and I'm going to say that while I love exploring the chemistry behind it, I couldn't tell you for the life of me if there's toffee in my whiskey. Haven't got a clue. Like, all I know is that this whiskey tastes different from this other one, and I enjoy it a bit more. And I think that there's a lot of people like that who, for me, okay, the bottle says vanilla, the bottle says toffee, it says Bakewell time. Am I going to actually pick that up? Am I going to pick this bottle based on those tasting notes? I don't know for a lot of people. I really don't know. And I don't know whether or not instead you could benefit from having something else on the bottle. Mm-hmm. I don't know, even just something as simple as a QR code.
Right.
Because for me, I think there's much more in knowing where the spirits come from and how it's come to be.
Yep.
Like, you can say vanilla and toffee all day long, but actually, so this is a bourbon or this is a scotch. What grain has gone into it? Mm-hmm. How has it been distilled? What sort of barrels has it been placed in? How long has it been placed in there? In what climate? And all of these things help to build that picture up in your mind of, maybe what to expect if you continue to, learn about this and continue to experience new whiskies in that way.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that when bottles will disclose, like the mash bill and the region, that they're trying to appease the side that is going to question that versus the side that is going to say, here are the flavor notes I should be getting, here's the packaging?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a good start. If it's, and I think this is more in America, certainly with bourbons. We've got a lot of single malts up there, so everything on the bottle will say malted barley.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
Yeah.
in America, I think that is quite a good first step. Yeah, okay, so you've got a lot of corn. So you've also got, maybe you've got quite a lot of rye. But as I've just explored this week in my posts, rye, the spiciness that you can get from rye, you don't always have to have. You can dial that in to however much you want. You can completely not have it. Or you can have on the other side that spectrum where it is overwhelmingly spicy or clovey. It's a good start, I think, disclosing the mash bill. And I just think that there's a lot of people, and maybe it's just appeasing the whiskey nerds like ourselves, but I think that it certainly does help to start to paint that picture in your head of, maybe why it tastes like this. But I just think we need more.
There's 2 or 3 or 4 or any number of factors that make a whiskey do what it's going to do. Mm-hmm. Taste the way it's going to taste. Obviously, there's water. Okay? Water is a huge thing, but we really don't talk about it other than it comes from our own proprietary spring, or it comes from underground waters that have traveled 100 miles or whatever it is. Or is it coming from a pump out in the back? Where's the water coming from? Hard water, soft water. What makes the ideal water?
I think the simple answer to that is there is no ideal water. And it depends on the final product that you want to make. There's a couple of different points when we talk about water as well. Your mash and your fermentation, so the water chemistry that you've got in there. But then also, lastly, the water that you would use to dilute your spirits. If you have cask strength, you don't have that. But, if you're going down to 40% or whatever it is, then you're going to need to dilute that down with water. And at each stage, it imparts different levels of minerals that, are going to adjust your experience. But I don't think you could ever say that there is one water better than another. There's one water that'll do a very specific job better than another one. But if a distiller wants to use a low calcium water, for a particular reason to generate a particular flavor, then that water is ideal to them. But it wouldn't be ideal to someone else that wants hard water, as an example. So I'd say it's difficult to answer, really. I don't think there is an ideal water.
Okay. And likewise, another unknown, and maybe this is totally proprietary, but yeast strains. Every distiller has their own yeast strain, and very, very few are disclosing what yeast strain is being used. I can only think of one. Maybe there's dozens or hundreds, I don't know. But Four Roses here in the United States, I think has 10 different yeast strains, and they mix their yeast to get a flavor out of what they're doing, and then they post that on the side of their bottles. What yeast group, they're not telling you how much yeast they're putting in, but they're saying what yeast group they're using. So you can expect it to be floral in nature or woody in nature or whatever because of those yeasts. Do you ever see a time when people are going to start doing more of that? What they're trying to do with the yeast?
Yeah. For me, I think that would need a sort of a fundamental shift from the way in which kind of business is done at the moment. Because certainly a lot of things are proprietary. I'm not going to disclose this because then there's a risk that someone else could recreate it. Yada, yada, yada. Not that everyone's got the money to actually go and build a brewery and distillery with exactly the same yeast.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, yeast, I think it's just understated massively the contribution that yeast have to flavor. I think you can have exactly the same grain, malt, distillation method, exactly the same barrel and climate, and if you've got a different yeast, you will have a different product at the end of it. And I think probably that's quite important to a distiller, so much so that I think until things are fundamentally changed, we won't be getting disclosures of exactly what yeast strain it is, not for some time, not for some time to come.
Do you think distillers are aware of exactly the yeast strains that are existing? Or do you think that they're just working with whatever is in the environment?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I think that there's a mixture of both. I think there'll be some that have literally no clue. I think there'll be some where they will have a yeast bucket in a fridge somewhere that they'll take some out of and to start a new fermentation, and that's just been handed down year after year after year. And I think that's great. That's fantastic. That is their own personal yeast that doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet because they've made it. And it's changed over time. That's great. And then there are some that, like, when I was in Jamaica, I went to the Appleton estate, and they initially relied on wild yeast, so just settling in the tanks, fermenting away. But then they said that they have actually analyzed it, cultivated it, isolated it, so they know exactly what the strain is, but it's still a wild strain that just exists in the air around their facility. I think the world of yeast is fascinating. Yeah, it's mind-boggling just how interesting it is. If you've ever been to Dublin, Guinness, they have, I think it's the world's biggest yeast library. Like, they've got them all on liquid nitrogen. Like, they have got thousands of strains of yeast. It's incredible. I've not been and seen it. I've only read about it, but it's amazing. And so I think that you've got everything in between. You've got people that haven't got a clue all the way up to higher-end genetic scientists. You've got everything.
Yeah.
Our experience with yeast is kind of on a family level. Alora bakes bread.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so obviously there's yeast. My brother back in Wisconsin is also a bread baker, and back in COVID times, he got started on the sourdough trend. He lives roughly 300 miles away from where our cabin is in the northern part of Wisconsin. He's been able to detect the difference between the sourdough bread that he has started in Madison, Wisconsin, and the
Which is in the south.
and the yeast from the cabin.
And it's wild yeast in both areas too. So it's very interesting how he's able to detect. And sometimes he'll take one starter home with him, or he'll leave it up there, and the difference will be clocked each time through each starter. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, and we've done it a couple of shows where we're drinking whiskey and having bread, and whether it'll be just a straight wheat bread or whether it'll be
A rye
or
flavored dough.
Like an Italian, or I kind of go all over the place with bread. Bread fascinates me, so I'll try to explore new recipes and then see how they compare with different kinds of profiles. So,
or what she does to make the yeast grow, whether it's just sugar or does she use honey. I mean, it changes the flavor in the breads.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really chemistry in bread.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
We touched a little bit about the mash bills. Obviously, the single malts are going to be all barley. Here in the States, you touched on it. We've got corn and we've got rye and we've got wheat.
In the case, because you're probably more exposed to the scotches and everything like that. So if it's a matter of, are you seeing a difference in how the water may be having an impact? Because maybe the mash bill isn't going to have as strong of a say-so, since it's all 100% malt barley, or just the general regional area and the climate that's associated with it. Do you think that you're able to go into those bottles with an expectation of this is sort of what we're probably going to get out of it?
Yes, to a certain extent. There's also a magic missing step there, and that's the distillation itself. And that can really start to shape things. As I've gone through all of these different parts, I think I started with maturation for some reason, and then I went to the grain, the fermentation, and then I went to the distillation. And the point that I hope I was trying to make when I was going through distillation, and it was quite some time ago, was that distillation is the distiller's chance not really to add flavor, but to shape it, to remove some flavors, to highlight some others. So the thing with that is that you can have a known grain, you can mash it in a known way, you can ferment it with a known yeast, and then you can, once it's distilled, you can put all that into a barrel. But there is that bit between where maybe the distillers decided to cut out maybe some esters, or maybe has decided to have quite a light heart and some of the heavy phenolics have stayed in. So there is a bit between where you do have the chance to completely change what you've got from the fermentation to what you put into the barrel. For me, what I really enjoy doing when I get a chance, because there's not always a chance, that's not always done by every distillery, is to taste, like some places they call them evolution sets or whatever they might be called, but start with their new make. And then if they have a chance with their 6-month, their 12-month, their 24-month, whatever it is just go through and see how it changes over time. Is it predictable changes? Is it not? Is it things like maybe you've got some heavy phenolics that are maybe oxidizing down into vanilla, something you didn't expect to happen. Maybe some of the esters are being broken down into fatty acids, so you're losing some of that fruity touch, and now you're highlighting maybe some more of the smoke from the wood. I think there is a way to predict what happens in the barrel, but you need to know first exactly what's happening in terms of what the new make is. And you need to know, like you say, the char. So certainly that helps to know, is it a new char? Is it a used char? Is it a really humid climate or a dry climate? Do you get big variations in temperature on a day-to-day and on a yearly basis? What is the maximum high temperature? What is the lowest low temperature? The variability that you can get in, say, maturation, like, it's phenomenal. But I think once you know all of those things, and there's a lot of people working in this space at the moment, you can start to paint that picture of what the final spirit will look like. Won't always be right, but you can definitely start to ballpark it a bit.
See where it's going.
Yeah. Because sometimes a cask may over-oxidize, you know, and if that happens, it's going to be wildly different to what you expected. It could be that even things like just the position in the rick house can affect it. You know, some blenders reckon that they can taste it from two barrels sat side by side to each other. So I think the variability is almost limitless in terms of what can happen at that stage.
We have 3 bourbons here in the United States, probably more, but 3 that are reasonably available. They're all high proof. 2 of them are put out by Heaven Hill. 1 of them is put out by Jim Beam. They have a product called Booker's. That's a Jim Beam product. Booker's releases 4 separate batches a year. All 4 taste different. Their age usually is close, about 7 years, 3 months or thereabouts. Might be 7 years, 9 months, might be whatever. But they're all close. Heaven Hill does 2, 1 a wheated and 1 a rye. Elijah Craig, they do 3 batches a year. Every one tastes different. Same way with their Larceny, it's the wheated product. They do 3 batches a year. It's interesting to us when we start comparing them. One is significantly better than the others, or they're so noticeable. You wonder, how can this be the same yeast? How can it be the same?
Well, with Booker's, they'll disclose far more than a lot of other products will over here. They'll not only say this is a 7-year, 3-month, 6-day-old, whatever,
Which is the youngest bourbon in the blend.
But they'll also say we took barrels from Rickhouse Z on row 7. We took barrels from Rickhouse W on row 9 and do the whole breakdown that way. And you can see the different spots that they'll pull. Some rick houses they hit up more than other ones batch to batch. Some rows they'll hit up more batch to batch. But sometimes you'll get a random brick house L or something like that, and just, well, that's a curveball. That's not a normal one. So it is really interesting to see how distillers move even through their own space and going, these things are unique, these things are unique. I can taste the difference between barrel to barrel, row to row, rick house to rick house. And it's essentially the same climate the whole way through, but it's where's the hot air rising in one versus the other. It's a lot of stuff.
How close to the window the barrel sat.
Yeah.
Well, this is it. Airflow is another major factor as well. The amount of air that passes into the barrel and the amount of proof that passes out, it all adds to that picture as well.
Yeah.
In Scotland, the temperature basically is reasonably stable. Doesn't go up real high, doesn't go down real high. Whereas in Louisville, Kentucky, where a lot of bourbon is made, you'll have temperature extremes to where it could be below 0 Fahrenheit, or
Oh, right.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. We watch a comedian and he talks about America doing certain things, and they say, why do you use Fahrenheit? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. It's just what we've decided to do. But go from like below 0 in Fahrenheit to above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And
in the same year.
A huge fluctuation within the span of a couple years, a few months from each other.
So you're pushing and pulling the liquid inside the barrel into and out of the barrel throughout the year. And it's going to happen different next year. And the year after that, it's going to be different still. So every year it's different, and as it's moving into and out of the barrel, you're also getting evaporation. So now you have less liquid to work inside the barrel.
But Kentucky is pretty humid too.
Yes, it's also very humid.
Yeah.
Well, that's another factor as well. Proof, as you know, doesn't stay stable Like it can change. In some cases it can go up, in some cases it can go down. And that actually plays a massive factor as well. So when you've got a system that contains water and ethanol, you've got a certain solvicity to it. It's able to extract certain things from the wood. But then, let's say you've got a very hot and humid climate, maybe that proof lowers quite quickly. Well, then actually what you've got now is a completely different solvent that's able to extract completely different things from the barrel. And even in a little microclimate like a rick house, if you've got two barrels and one's got slightly better airflow than another, then you're going to be getting more of that evaporation in one than the other. And therefore, you're going to be extracting different things in the same two barrels side by side. So even just airflow can have a major impact.
And then we got to ask, so like we've done all this now with the distillation, the maturation, everything there, and then it gets to the consumer. And the consumer can do a whole host of things with it. They could have it how we're having it, with just neat, adding a splash of water, putting it over ice, they put it in mixed drinks. I mean, how do you approach that space and that wild card, as it were, the consumer?
Well, I also touched on this earlier in the year, and the main point that I wanted to make was, and it drives me doolally when I see people gatekeeping how you're supposed to drink a spirit. Drink the bloody thing the way you want to.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Absolutely.
matter. Do you want to drink it with ice? Do it. Do you want to drink it chilled, warm, with water, without? I don't care. Drink it the way you enjoy. But what I was trying to do in that series as well is just also explain that some of these things can affect your experience. So drinking it chilled versus warm, that's just something for like the volatile components. The colder it is, the less volatile they'll be, the warmer, the more volatile. So you'll get much more of a headspace in the glass, and you'll be able to detect that much easier. Yeah. You may have a whiskey that is intense. So if you're someone that maybe wants to tone that down a bit, chill it. I don't care. Do it. And the thing with cask proof as well is that you do have a lot of flavor in cask proof, but some of that flavor is also completely solubilized in that high ethanol. And what that means is that actually, if you were to take the same whiskey at cask proof, give it a smell, and then you were to just add a little bit of water to it, well, like I said as well, like previously with the casks, is that once you've got more water than you do ethanol, you've changed how it acts as a solvent. So now certain components may actually be less soluble and therefore actually go into the vapor phase. So you can have the same whiskey, cask and bottle strap, and you'll get two very different smells from it. So again, it's about what is your preference. And I don't think that there is in any way, shape or form an ideal preference. I think that whiskey companies, they can say to you, this is the way we recommend, just based on its profile. I think that's fine. I think actually that's quite good for a consumer because they may not know where to start. But just drink it the way you like.
Yeah. We're big advocates of that over here too. I mean, we drink everything neat, but there'll be times where we'll have something that's very high proof and we'll get out the little dropper and put some distilled water in there just to see what it does and how other flavors are allowed to bloom and come out. But certainly for the people who do want to have it over ice or put it in a mixed drink, it's all up to them. We think whiskey is an art form. It's obviously a chemical art form, but it's an art form. However you want to interpret your art is how you interpret your art.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of my favorite memes, I guess, would be whiskey, in fact, is a solution. All the problems in the world, I mean, it's a solution. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had to say it. So, John, you've touched on a little bit. Your day job. I don't want to get real deep in that, but you said you're a higher scientific officer. What do you do there?
Some stuff is I can't necessarily go into,
Sure,
but
sure.
basically I work for the UK government, a branch of it that focuses on farming, agriculture, rural affairs, stuff like that, but also the environment. So what we are starting to do in this country, which quite a few other countries are starting to do, is move to what's called a circular economy. The way I would describe that at the moment, the current way that we have is a linear economy. So we mine for a resource, we turn it into a product, we use the product, we chuck it away.
Okay.
That's linear.
Yeah.
So a circular economy is maybe you still mine for some material, but actually what you do is you make your product, you use your product, you maybe reuse, remanufacture, repair, recycle, whatever it might be. You do all of that to keep the material itself in the economy. Therefore, you're reducing your reliance on raw materials and you're also reducing your waste output. And yeah, so it's just working on that. And my specific job is just to provide some scientific evidence and analysis support for that. So if someone's got a claim, I'll look into that claim and I'll just along those lines, basically.
Oh, cool. So my last question, I'm sure I'm going to have a last question, but my last question, and I want you to have fun with this. Think a little bit before you answer. What is something whiskey drinkers think matters, but really doesn't matter at all?
Oh. I might go two ways with this question.
Okay.
So I might say whiskey drinkers and whiskey makers. So for whiskey drinkers, I think we've covered it. It's the way in which you drink it. And as well as older is better. I see this time and again, it's a 40-year-old, it's a 60-year-old. Me, personally, I like younger expressions. I like a bit more fruity character. I prefer that. Something that's been in the oak for too long, I don't get as much enjoyment out of that. But also, I think that there is a lot of hype around, God, this cask is 40 years old. For me, just looking into it, all I know is that quite a lot of the flavors that you want to extract out of the wood have already been extracted out of the wood long before then. What you're doing as a distiller is you're allowing your product to oxidize and oxidize and oxidize, but also you're allowing it to evaporate and evaporate and evaporate. It's just a personal preference, but I don't see it as being like the big thing in whiskey is overaging. My second point was going to be for whiskey makers, or maybe even people that legislate rules for whiskey. And that for me is minimum ages for something to be called a whiskey. Now, I know in America it can be slightly, I don't think there is a defined rule for bourbon.
For bourbon,
but I
it
think
has to be a minimum of...
It's all in labeling. Technically, if it comes off the still and it's put in a wooden bucket that has some charring on the inside and it's poured out of that bucket into a glass, it could be called bourbon. It probably isn't very good, but it made the trip through the still, it had the mash, it did all the things. It got put in an oak bucket that had an open top, didn't matter if it was closed. The aging of you walking to the glass and then emptying the bucket into your glass, it's technically bourbon. However, not very many people are going to enjoy that. So
Yeah.
in the labeling aspect of it, in the United States, if it's going to be bourbon, anything less than 4 years old must have an age statement on it. If it's 2 years old, it can be called straight bourbon. If it's 4 years old and it's been in a bonded warehouse, a government-controlled warehouse, they can call it bottled in bond, provided it came from one distilling season, from one distiller, from one set of grains,
And it's 100 proof.
and it's bottled at 100 proof. It could be called a bottled in bond bourbon.
Okay.
4 years, 1 day, all bets are off. It's still bourbon, but it no longer has to have an age statement. It can, you'll see many bottles with no age on them at all. My gut tells me in the next 4 to 6 years, we're going to start seeing lots of age statement bourbon, because there's such a glut of whiskey in general on the world stage right now. We read recently there's 16.7 million barrels of bourbon aging in Kentucky right now. That's more than 3 barrels for every person who lives in Kentucky.
Well, they're going to have a nice time, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yeah. There's more scotch out there than there is bourbon. You're seeing lots of distilleries that are kind of scaling back on their production right now.
So for me, like, I so do enjoy seeing how spirits are shaped. I enjoy trying new make spirits. Absolutely hasn't touched oak at all. And I have experienced some phenomenal new makes. I love them. I really do, in some cases. Like, I think that some of the old rules about having a minimum time in a cask, particularly in the Scotch industry, it comes out of World War II era, trying to make sure that people weren't going to be poisoning themselves and making sure that there weren't going to be competitors that could put out large quantities sooner than they could, and all of this stuff. And I think we've moved on from that now. And I think that, while there is a whole lot of people that are trying to chase those really old age statements, I think as well there's room for some very young age statements. And in some cases, with how estery and floral they can be, I think that is an area where a lot of people might start, like, that could bring in a lot of younger drinkers, I think. Not that we want to actively encourage drinking too much, but, I think
Right.
it could definitely bring in a different crowd as well.
We're seeing that here in the United States with our newest whiskey, American Single Malt. It was officially labeled as an American whiskey, being produced with many of the same criteria that Scotch is produced, single malt barley. We're seeing some really neat stuff coming out. It doesn't matter where it's made. It doesn't matter what it's aged in. A lot of the traditionalists are still putting it in oak, but it may go into a beer barrel, be aged in a beer barrel. I mean, it's really interesting of all the things that are happening. We don't get any props from the people that we mention. One of them is Virginia Distilling. They partner with various different groups to make their whiskeys. They have a brewers coalition where they go around the country and they get beer barrels. They age their product in their own barrels first, and then they'll finish them in beer barrels. Well, I mean, it's just fun stuff, and very different, very floral, like you say.
And I think that there could be a lot of room to bring on board new drinkers. I think some people can be put off by, this is a 40-year-old, it's a single malt, it's, all of this. What if you've got a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and it's, instead of being overly vanillin or something like that, it's actually, maybe it's got quite a lot of notes of apple and pineapple and pear and whatnot. I think that would be quite an innovative new route, but also the cask finishes as well. I really enjoy them. I think that just adds just a pleasant new flavor. It's another little lever that you can pull to sort of just adjust that flavor how you want. But yeah, for me, I think definitely let's do away with these old aging rules. I think let's try and bring in new drinkers to enjoy it. Let's have some younger whiskies.
Well, John, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground, and at the same time, we just scratched the surface. You can tell that we're kind of nerds in all this stuff. I get a heck of a lot of enjoyment of digging way deeper than maybe I need to, but it's what I'm putting into my body. I like to know what it is. I just love that. Is there anything that
Absolutely.
we missed that you think we should know in the last minute or two here of our discussion?
Oh God, we covered so much. Yeah, I think just having that level of transparency, knowing how and why certain flavors have come to be in your glass is very powerful. I think not just for distillers, because that can help them to better experiment, but also for consumers. I get a bit more pleasure out of drinking something if I really know why it is the way that it is. So I just think, yeah, just that, and that's why I've started all of this, is just to help people better understand it.
Yeah, and demystifying it, because it seems like a very big, complex, even scary topic. You know, bringing the word chemistry in, I know, you know, it can be a scary word sometimes, even though when you really look at it and you're able to break it down to some simple words like humidity or age or water, it doesn't get as scary. So it doesn't have to be that way. It's just an open, like you say, transparent conversation, and just approach it with an open mind and don't be afraid of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you shouldn't be scared of chemistry. Absolutely not.
It's cool stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Well, John, this has been so fun having you online with us. It's just, I can talk to you for hours.
Well, it's been a great conversation. Thank you very much. And it's always lovely to meet other like whiskey nerds. It's very fun.
Well, thank you so much for coming on again, and it was lovely to meet you finally. We've been hearing so much about you in the newsletter from Dad, and he's been so excited to have you on, so it's been really great to hear your perspective and get a global view on things. We haven't had a non-American on the show before, so that's been a lot of fun. Thank you for being here.
Oh, wow. No pressure.
No,
It's been
you
awesome.
did the world proud.
Yes. But we really appreciate
Well, I've
it.
had a really lovely time. Seriously, thank you very
Awesome.
much for having me on.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And if our paths cross again, I would certainly enjoy having you on our show. Anytime you want to have an idea that says, hey, I'd like to get on their show and talk about this, we'd love to have you. I mean, we flex pretty easily.
Well, thank you very much. I will remember that. I absolutely will.
I mean, we're not much of a medium, but we have fun.
Yeah.
Well, that's the important bit.
Yeah.
John, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Loved having you on the show.
Yep. We will see you next time, whenever next time may be.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me on again.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Well, that was a lot of fun. I got a couple of news stories for this fortnight in whiskey. My first one, AI sniffs out whiskey flavor notes as well as the pros do. So this one kind of caught me odd. You know, I play a little bit with AI from time to time. The girls are both looking at me like from time to time. So the bouquet of a drink is the product of dozens of gaseous molecules. In the case of whiskey, just as we got done discussing, there are more than 40 compounds creating odors or aromas ranging from vanilla to caramel to smokiness. And as we all know, human noses can detect delicate aromas in the glass. We call our well-trained human experts whiskey masters.
We don't purport to be those.
Not
No,
at
we're
all.
whiskey amateurs.
Yeah.
What about machines? What can science detect? Well, back in 2018, analytical devices called mass spectrometers started to be made. Think of them like electronic noses, if you will. They demonstrated the ability to identify odorants in mixtures, but getting down to the subtle odor array has proven a bit challenging. Individual molecules have different odors depending on what the medium is, whether they're being detected out of the air or in water or in oil. And different odors can stand against one another in complex ways. So chemists have become flavor detectives, developing laboratory methods to supplement the human experience and identify molecular makeup of whiskeys. So just this last year, back in December, a study was published in Communications Chemistry. It's an open access scientific journal, and the molecular makeup of 16 whiskeys was connected to their odor profiles. The study, done by a team of scientists from Freising, Germany, used a machine learning algorithm to determine the molecular composition of whiskeys and if they could detect or predict their odors. The test whiskeys were 16 previously analyzed samples that consisted of 7 American whiskeys and 9 Scotches. Then 17 pre-selected aroma attributes were shared with 11 whiskey masters, and each master identified their top 5 aromas in each whiskey. The master's top attributes varied per whiskey, which we might expect, and the researchers then determined an aggregate top 5 from the odors per whiskey. To determine those top 5 automated flavor notes from each whiskey, the research team combined 2 algorithms. One, a statistical computer model, which distinguished samples based on detected molecules, and the other, a neutral network, trying to predict identifiable scents based on the detected molecules. Combining those 2 algorithms, they came up with their top 5 notes in each whiskey. The research team compared the human assessments with the top 5 flavor notes that were identified by algorithms, and they consistently matched those of the humans. Those top 5 most frequent descriptors: fruity, apple-like, solvent-like, pear-like, and caramel.
Which is ironic because John was just talking about that.
Apple, pear.
Exactly.
Fruity. Yeah.
And those are hard flavors to get in whiskey because, like he was kind of alluding to, those may be flavors more common in a younger whiskey before the wood can really take over, because those are subtler flavors, apple and pear.
Exactly. Most surprising, in both human and machine lists, vanilla-like was quite low, as were spice, wood, and floral.
Despite vanilla being on all of the flavor tasting notes on bottles all the time.
Exactly.
Like we were just talking.
I thought that was kind of a cool analysis there. While machine analysis suggests accuracy in identifying those strongest aromas, AI still can't tell you how much you're going to enjoy the whiskey you're having for you.
After all, it is such a human thing to be able to smell and taste. So AI is going off of is just what specific humans have programmed it to be able to detect.
Exactly. You can access the full scientific analysis from the study within the link to this news story on our website. My second story: how alcohol helped create ancient civilizations. Historical records show alcohol was integral to ancient cultures, from Mesopotamia and Egypt to Greece and China, as well as here in the New World, the Mayan and Incan empires. A new study supports the theory fermented drinks contributed to the rise of complex societies by helping the elites consolidate their power. Alcohol was deeply embedded in society. It was offered to the gods for prosperity, used as payment for laborers in major construction projects, and distributed by elites during feasts, all to foster social cohesion and reinforce hierarchies.
I learned about I don't know if it was a Celtic or a Viking group of people, but the leader, whenever they would be faced with a very complicated decision, they would drink until they were completely drunk that night. And if they still remembered their previous answer to that question the following day, it would come to pass in law.
Yeah, you see that a lot of times, and it's not just with spirits, it's with other intoxicants that can create certain effects on the mind. People would use those pretty frequently in order to communicate with the gods, in order to make decisions for the good of their society. That's not to be derogatory towards any of those products at all. It's just another facet of how integral they were to the functioning of a lot of ancient societies.
So back in ancient Sumer, located in southern Mesopotamia, modern-day southern Iraq, beer played a vital role in religion, economics, and politics.
There you go.
The Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh was focused on the fifth king of Uruk. It included the tale of the wild Enkidu, where he drinks beer to become civilized. Scholars believed it highlights alcohol's significance. Many even argue the flavor of alcohol's link to the development of civilization, declaring alcohol was the key driver in forming complex societies.
It certainly played a part, because one thing that we've highlighted, certainly through this episode and through others as well, alcohol takes a while. In whatever capacity you're doing it in, you're having to sit and grow a grain or grow a fruit, and then you're having to distill it and potentially put it in a barrel for some type of aging, or just a wooden bucket like we were talking about. All of this takes time, meaning if you're a nomadic tribe, you're not really making alcohol that frequently, because you just don't have the means to settle down and commit that kind of time to it. However, if you do have that time and you're able to make all of these grains, sit down and do a distillation and an aging, you're essentially showing a specialization in your craft. And likewise, there are other people in your group who are showing specializations in their own crafts, like making clothing or making decisions or farming livestock or things like that, building houses. You're able to settle down, and now you have to work together in a new way in order to make sure that while, yes, I'm specialized in this one thing and I'm making beer or whiskey or whatever, I'm still able to have a house over my head and clothes on my body and other food grown for me. That's how you get the complexity in societies, the specialization of people, and then the collaborative effort of making sure that everybody has equal access, or at least some degree of access to the basic necessities.
And I dare say distillation was an accident, because someone left some dough or flour and water mixed out
Or
for
a plant,
several days,
or some barley laying in a wet bucket.
or their fruit had gone bad. I don't know, but essentially they were like, "Oh, this actually doesn't taste like crap." I think that we can really make something out of this, and I kind of like the feeling in my head.
So, University of British Columbia philosophy professor Edward Singerland wrote a book, and his book is called Drunk: How We Sipped, Danced, and Stumbled Our Way into Civilization. In the book, he's integrating archaeology, history, neuroscience, psychopharmacology, social psychology, literature, and genetics to support his claim.
It all makes sense to me.
Yep.
Slingerland suggests a desire for intoxication outweighed the health and social drawbacks, fostering large stratified societies.
Now that's interesting, because outweighed health and social drawbacks, I don't know if I'd go quite that far, because at this time in a lot of ancient societies, whatever brew they're making, it's not going to have like a super, super high alcohol
because they
content.
do only have so much time. They're
Yeah.
not thinking of, we need to age this for 12 years. 12 years was honestly probably half their lifespan.
Yeah.
So, no. It'd probably be for months,
And
maybe a year at most.
And a lot of times, maybe not so much in ancient culture, but certainly in more recent modern history, alcohol's been safer to drink than water is.
Yep.
Because water has
water is
bacteria, water
Sewage.
has sewage in it, water has got however many animals traipsing around in it and everything else.
I mean, you think back towards the Industrial Revolution. Oof.
Yeah, cholera was a thing.
They had to boil water.
We talked about it in our very first season when we had the history of whiskey in America, where there were more barrels of wine and alcohol on the Mayflower than there were of water. And the water went bad before they got here. The water went bad.
Yeah.
So a new study tested the drunkenness hypothesis. Researchers analyzed the data using traditional fermented drinks from 186 ethnographical societies with varying political complexity.
That's a really good sample size, honestly.
The study found a positive link between the presence of fermented drinks and a higher political complexity. By isolating alcohol's role in the societies through agricultural intensity or the way people impacted their environment, commonalities began to emerge. Intoxication lowered inhibitions and promoted bonding. Drinking rituals created a sense of belonging. Alcohol stimulated divergent thinking and loosened thought patterns. Laura, you touched on that.
Yeah.
While alcohol has its health and social costs, the cultural benefits tip the scale.
Again, I don't know if I'd go quite that far. I think that you have to take how people are interacting with alcohol in conjunction with how people are interacting with the rest of their environment, like farming other livestock, like building houses, like having materials used to create clothing, the seasonality of being able to access all of those goods to do all of those trades. I think it all works together. I'm not sure this is an entirely cause and effect thing. With
Correlation
alcohol
does
being,
not equal causation.
Yeah. But it's an interesting thing to factor in with houses, food, clothes.
So as I'm putting this story together, I couldn't help but think about the rites of passage we have today. I mean, from university party and binge drinking to birthdays and vacations and holidays and anniversaries and funerals. I mean, come on.
Oh, sure.
We're drinking at almost every one of those.
Yeah.
And what is it doing to us? It's bringing us closer together.
That definitely.
So are we that much different than our ancient relatives?
No, absolutely not.
No.
While this study did not explore specific mechanisms, the data suggests that alcohol aided political complexity, enabling elites to mobilize the labor just as we thought, to forge alliances and consolidate power. Now, it must be noted, the researchers did not focus on today's liquors. They focused, like you said, Hannah, and you said, Laura, probably on much lower alcohol content beverages. They're probably looking at
Wines.
beers and wines.
Yeah.
You know,
And I don't know. But I'm coming at this from an anthropological standpoint. So anthropology and philosophy, while related, have their own intricacies to them. I'm not sure how often in an ancient environment your layperson would be getting drunk. That's not effective for the society. Come on, George, get it together.
I feel
like we have a house we have to build before the frost hits.
I feel like philosophy is like, what's his life? And then anthropology is like, this is life.
Like, maybe
this is life.
yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't read this study, so I could be, totally spitballing and making assumptions of intent that are not there. But these would be the questions that I would ask, and that hopefully I've gotten you guys as listeners to also ask a little bit too.
So here's my philosophy. When we share a glass of whiskey, we're joining an ancient dance. where creativity, risk, and trust have all mingled before, setting a course for our own destinies.
You're starting to sound like you're going to use the ritual word. And we know how I feel about the ritual word.
Speaking of whiskey, how about some new bottles to go scavenging for? Elijah Craig's youngest barrel-proof bourbon, we touched on that during our visit with John, is packed with explosive power. Elijah Craig's barrel-proof batch C925 has been released, and it's the line's strongest of the year. 64.5% ABV or 129 proof.
Ooh.
It carries the line's youngest age statement to date, just 9 years and a month old.
And that's significant. Those are 12-year-old bottles typically.
Yep. Since debuting in 2013, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof has become a Heaven Hill trademark. Like all Elijah Craig bourbons, the whiskey has a mash bill of 78% corn, 12% malt barley, and 10% rye. Between 2013 and 2023, Elijah Craig Barrel Proofs all had that 12-year age statement on the label. And then in mid-2023, Heaven Hill started shifting the age statements, and they posted those on their bottles. At the 9-year, 1 month, the C925 is the youngest Elijah Craig Barrel Proof that they've ever released. Barrel proof ages and proof vary by edition now due to the bourbon barrels aging at different rates. Distiller tasting notes are sparse. It says they're bold yet refined. Well, 129 proof.
I should think.
Palette of warm vanilla, caramel, and light char.
Weren't those almost the exact same thing? There was
Exactly.
toffee, vanilla,
Exactly.
oak. Yeah, that's funny.
Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Bourbon is available nationwide at a suggested retail price of $75 and about 55 pounds for Britain or 65 euros. Yellowstone Limited Edition marks its 10th anniversary. As part of Luxco under MGP's expansive umbrella, Limestone Branch and Ross and Squibb distilleries show what family collaboration can achieve. This year's Yellowstone Limited Edition release, it's an annual launch which began back in 2015, honors the finest spirits worthy of the Yellowstone bourbon name. For the 10th anniversary edition, Stephen Beam, who is the founder and master distiller of Limestone Branch Distillery, and his team collaborated with the blending team at Ross and Squibb. Stephen Beam is the great-grandson of Minor Case Beam, an early 20th century distiller who himself was one of the great-grandsons of Jacob Beam of the Big Jim Beam family. The combined team selected barrels from Indiana and Kentucky distilleries and created a blend for this year's commemorative edition. The 10-year anniversary limited edition uses 3 unique mash bills, each aged for 10 years, then bottled at 52.5% ABV or 105 proof. The exact grain compositions of the mash bills have not publicly been disclosed. Distiller tasting notes here: aroma, vanilla, oak, and citrus. On the palate, caramel, toffee, stone fruit, charred oak, honey, cherry, and cinnamon.
My goodness.
30,000 bottles were released in September, suggested a retail price of $100.
Now, we've had Yellowstone bourbon before. It hasn't been the limited release version as far as the bourbon's concerned. The bourbon that you grab off the shelf, that's a fine bourbon. I don't think there's really anything wrong with it. I think Yellowstone really hits their stride personally with the American single malt edition that they have out. That's the one that really opened my eyes to American single malts and have made that whole category a lot more approachable to me now. So this would still be something I'd be interested in giving a try. My heart's probably still going to sit with the American single malt as far as Yellowstone's concerned.
These are just a couple of the releases, and as always, to learn more about these and many more offerings, as well as other great news stories, go to the Whiskey for the Ages episode archive page on our website. There you're going to find links to all the episodes, their corresponding news pages, as well as the citations for the reporting news sources. That's our show.
This was a really great show. Again, thank you so much to John for coming on and
Yes, thank you.
giving the perspective that he has on this industry. I think it's a really unique perspective, and I do see it as being one that's going to become more popularized in the industry as more whiskey nerds come forward, especially with the glut that we're anticipating within the next several years. I think there's going to be a higher demand than ever to know more about what exactly it is we're consuming, understanding the science of it all. And again, it doesn't have to be a scary topic. I know chemistry is scary, and I'm saying that as someone with a biological background. Chemistry,
I'm saying that it's kind of scary to hear the word, and I'm from a music background.
Well, I mean,
but no, it is really, really interesting. Just reword it in a little ways, and you'll get everyone talking about it.
Yeah, and I think the newsletter that he puts out, Distilled Edit, definitely go check that out. Very approachable. He has that teaching background and has a lot of knowledge on the subject.
And every one of his posts includes some pretty cool graphics. They're drawn in such a way that he's taking a piece, let's say it's a barrel, and in the barrel he'll have a line going to it and pointing out one part of the barrel and what flavor is coming out of here, or what we might expect from this, or what you might expect from that. It's such a cool thing. Loved having him on the show.
An easy rabbit hole to get down for sure. And we're going to keep going down our own rabbit hole here through this season. We're about at that midway point now. Things to continue to look forward to for the rest of the season. We are going to have more whiskey reviews. We still have that listener's pick that'll be coming up. Expect to see the options for that listener's pick to pop up on your social media the closer we get to that episode. We are going to be doing another distillery spotlight. That one will be led by yours truly, as always. And I'm also going to be doing another archaeology show. Maybe I'll hint on whatever's going on with that philosophy article and loop back around to it, or I'll take another whole direction entirely. I don't know. Unpredictability and all that. Dad's got more whiskey history planned, as he always does. Gotta have that. And then, of course, along the way, we're going to be sharing our tips and tricks that we've learned, and hopefully bring you more, maybe even into this chemistry world with us, so it's more approachable to you guys as you go on your whiskey journeys too.
Absolutely. So, be sure to send in your comments and subscribe to the show. As we've said earlier, subscribers do get updated notifications on whenever we are posting. Subscribing really, really helps us in Google rankings, and it just helps us drive future content. Now that we are branching to YouTube, I expect a lot more coming from this. It'll be great.
And go check us out over there. Eventually we'll have video up with our audio as well. We're really looking forward to expanding that platform.
And so ends another episode.
And a huge thank you to our guest again, John Angus. It's been a lot of fun having him on the show and offering his perspective.
Please join us for our next.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.